The biggest problem with FECs now is all those activities are not integrated. I want to hit a bullseye on the axe and get a free beer at the bar, 5 free laps on the karting. It should all be integrated in one experience.
FECs are evolving. How do you think FECs in the next 10 years, in 2030, 2035, how will it look like?
I think it's to become more interactive. The idea is like the complete experience. If I'm badass Bob in the VR game, why can't I transfer that and be the same character in karting? It's that kind of sort of technology that brings all these activities together that's going to make a huge difference. When I first joined the firm 29 years ago, my very first project was a nursing home. Right after that, I did a movie theater.
It's a swing. All these projects that you've been working on, how do you always stay on the edge?
No matter what all the different experiences are, we're trying to achieve the exact same goal. When our patron walks through the front door, we want them to be blown away. You actually see all the stuff that's going on.
We bring it all the way over towards the entrance so that even people from the outside could see it.
Yeah.
And it was all about that grand entrance and that big wow effect. Robert McCall, thanks for joining today, our episode of RH1 Unplugged. It's really great to have you. We always have a good time catching up and chatting about our experiences. Before we start off, how about you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself and your company?
Sure. Again, thank you for having me. I've been following the podcast. It's awesome. I'm glad to be part of it. I'm going to try to make it at least marginally as good as it has been.
No doubt about that.
So, Robert McCall, I am an architect. I'm a principal at JKRP Architects in Philadelphia. We have been in existence for 40 years. We've been doing entertainment architecture for 30 years. And we're going to talk about this later, but like it's a constant like evolution. From year to year, it changes every single year. And I think the group of people that are in this industry are always recreating themselves and so forth, which makes it personally exciting for me. And that's kind of like the whole point of it, really. It's fun.
You're based out of Atlanta, is that right?
Philadelphia.
So you're based out of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us about how you started. How did you get into this whole entertainment architecture? I mean, you don't do only entertainment, right? You
Correct. The entertainment portion of our practice is about 40% of our practice. We have about 60 architects. We're kind of a decent mid-sized firm. The other portion is retail and residential. And when I first joined the firm, which we don't do this anymore, this was 29 years ago, we used to do nursing homes. And so my very first project was a nursing home, which is a lovely sort of like building type. It's taking care of people as they get older or whatever, but it's quite a bit different than what we practice now, right? And it was great. You know, I was 25 years old, and I'm like surveying a nursing home, and everybody thought I was their grandson. But it was a perfectly fun experience, but it wasn't my thing. And then right after that, I did a movie theater. And doing the movie theater was challenging or whatever, but when we were done with it, they had a grand opening party, and all these people are walking into this place, and they're walking around, big smiles on their face, marveling at, the theater, and it was just a complete place of joy. And I think that's pretty much when we talk about my journey, I'm like, it's a nice thing, like what we do. What do? We actually make people happy, right? People come into the facilities we build and they marvel and their eyes are going in 15 different directions, especially now. That first movie theater might not have been the most exciting thing, but you can actually sense it. That's a place where people go voluntarily for joy, and it's a wonderful thing. They bring their wife and their children and their boyfriends and their girlfriends. It's a lovely thing.
And so starting off with nursing homes, obviously cinemas and
it's a swing, right?
It's a swing, and I could definitely see why people are more happy going into a cinema than a nursing home. On the other hand, over the past 30 years, what has been over your biggest challenges that you have seen during this journey in becoming a specialist in the industries?
I think the greatest thing about it is that it's very nice of you to call me a specialist, but I'm not a specialist. None of us are, because it changes every year. Theaters change every year. Restaurants change every year. FECs change every year. It's not like a scenario like, if I was doing like garden apartments, they're the same. I mean, we might do something slightly different than we did 30 years ago, but there's still a garden apartment. You have the toilet, the red bathroom, whatever. If you look at the stuff we're doing now compared to like theaters, restaurants, FECs, it's completely different. Like, so I actually personally find it professionally, like, it's like exciting, right? Because you're always learning. And I think I'm wired that way, by the way. Like, I never feel safe. There's always something like, oh, well, that's the VR from yesterday. We don't do that anymore. We're doing like this thing and that type of thing. And I'm like, with the carding and everything like that. And I actually think it's professionally, it's stimulating. That's a challenge, because the thing about it is you have to be nimble enough to realize that, oh, I don't know everything. And there's this new technology that came out, and I have to like sit and listen to like the vendor and so forth. It's like, oh yeah, we don't do that anymore. Now we're projecting all this stuff on the track, and we need these projectors upstairs and this and kind of that. So there's no like sort of like, I don't want to say there's no comfort zone. At some point, you kind of realize how to deal with the new technology as it comes along. But it's great because there's always something new.
I mean, over the past, all these projects that you've been working on, from that cinema 30 years ago until maybe your recent project, how do you cope with these changes? How do you always stay on the edge of creating always a one of a kind experience for customers walking in? What is your inspiration there?
There's a very basic formula, and we've talked about this, that no matter what all the different experiences are, and they're all different, and they all have different technology and this and that and whatever, but in the end, we're trying to achieve the exact same goal. When our patron walks through the front door, we want them to be like blown away, right? We want them to actually see all the stuff that's going on. There's sort of almost a mechanical way that we design FECs. It's about circulation. When you walk in the door, what do you see? And we've talked about this a lot, right? It's a circulation. Like, if I'm here, there's the food and beverage, there's the carding, there's this. The food and beverage can be like crazy. The carding can be crazy. Everything can change. But on a very basic level, the very like experience of the patron stays the same, and this is how we actually craft it.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember the first time we had our first call working on that project in Cambodia. Funny enough, because architects are very, very stubborn on their ideas and very passionate, and I was really passionate. But we, in a way, we found a really good synergy, and somehow we really thought eye to eye. We saw the same kind of customer flow, and we really wanted to create something exceptional. And the way we worked on that project, I mean, it was flawless. I mean, and we kind of challenged each other in how can we up it even further? How can we go, yes, oh yeah, you want to bring the card here, but how about we bring it all the way over towards the entrance so that even people from the outside could see it. Yeah. And it was all about that grand entrance and that big wow effect. So that definitely resonates.
You had a very clear vision of your brand with Doozy and for Neo. Doozy was like the sort of young children version of it, and Neo was the other. And you actually shared with us the branding and like the concept of it, which is huge, because that's like, those are all the really hard like first steps. And then from there, like together we worked through it, and it was great. I actually think it was a wonderful experience.
So JKRP is celebrating 40-year anniversary, is that right?
Yeah. And I haven't been there 40 years, only 29, by the way, just for the record.
What was your most exceptional, or which one do you remember, maybe because it was challenging or it was difficult, and why? And the second one, which one are you maybe the most proud of in terms of customer experience?
I'll go second question first. And it sounds like a cop-out, but really, I will say that every new project that we do, I'm most proud of, because so much of everything that we've learned and everything that like we've done, it's amazing. Like I look at projects I did 10 years ago, I'm like, ugh, really? And then I'm like, it's just like, and like the stuff like you and I did together, and even stuff that I'm doing now, it's because it's like you learn so much, and there's so many new exciting things between food and beverage, and like whatever project I did yesterday is my most exciting because it's the sum total of all of my experience, and clients are getting better and better and so forth, and especially in the FECs area. And I think the first question was like my first international project. I actually did like an IMAX Theater Visitor Center at the Miraflores Locks in Panama. That was my first truly international project where I was going there every month. It was the whole experience of it was great. I was completely like out of my comfort zone. Obviously, I knew the product, but like the process was really interesting.
How was that? How was that interesting?
It was funny because you travel to a foreign country where everybody speaks Spanish, and then you go into this institution that is still the remnant of American government projects. So funny, as you're walking in, everybody's speaking Spanish. When the meeting starts, everybody speaks English because it's procedure, which is crazy because they own the canal. Like, why are you speaking English? You guys are a Spanish-speaking country, right? Like little procedures and stuff like that. And I mean, it's the Panama Canal, so it's like no small thing. But that's what I really like about it. I really like the idea of like, we've talked about this a lot in the projects we did together. In Cambodia, obviously, I'm an American, right? And we're designing an experience for people in Cambodia. And you had mentioned you want some sort of American twist on it, but there's definitely like cultural sort of things that you need to be aware of and be sensitive to make it happen. And I love stuff like that.
Well, that's our next 3-year, 5-year plan is to get you on more international projects, right? I mean, we've been trying to get you over here at Asia. I wanted to circle back on, you were talking about how customers are getting better and better. How on FECs and so on, how do you see the shift? What is changing in the FEC today?
Oh my gosh. We didn't do FECs 10 years ago, because FECs 10 years ago were a bunch of inflatables in some industrial building, right? And it was not an experience that was designed. It was sort of an experience that some guy just put a bunch of stuff in. And I have older children, they're 23 and 21. So when they were 10 years old, and we wanted to go do a birthday party, we went to like a warehouse, and there was a bunch of inflatables, and the experience was horrible. The ambient noise was like maddening. The pizza stunk, And in the last 10 years, there's such a designed experience for it, and it's crafted. And I think this is for even like for younger folks and even like older folks, as we talk about 20 to 35-year-olds, the food and beverage program is huge. We work with a consultant, a FEC consultant, and he talks about its attractions as a third, food and beverage concern and is a third, and bar is a third. And so for those folks, it's like we do high-end restaurants, but now we do high-end restaurants that are part of an FEC. And it's amazing, like the kitchens in our FECs are as large as the kitchens as our high-end restaurants, are as large as the kitchens in our dine-in theaters, even more complicated. It's just the experience is being ramped up again and again and again, because I think people are looking for that.
I think that really resonates with what's happening here in Asia as well, where it used to be very fragmented. I mean, just an area with some video games, and then another area with maybe a playground or a jumping castle or a few lanes of bowling. But putting that element of F&B seems to be really that kind of centerpiece that glues it all together. And people are not really just looking for a place to play, but a place to also sit down and kind of decompress after the game and then come back, and that's kind of like the regroup area. And you're right. I mean, the F&B is getting super sophisticated. We're talking like full on drinks and cocktails and menu and decent food. I mean, this is a place where you would probably go there to dine and maybe play. And maybe is it maybe the food the first intention? And because there are all the games around it, that could also be an incentive for the customer to go to that particular area.
So let me ask you a question. So when I see theaters in Southeast Asia, it's like over the top. Are FECs going in that direction? Like, what's keeping FECs back? Like, because some of the theaters that we see, and we don't do theaters over there. It's like fine dining, and like the design, and it's like the experience is like completely like unbelievably higher than like anything we have in the US. Are FECs on the way to get to that
Well,
experience? It seems like it's the next logical step, or no.
you know, companies like JKRP and my company RH1 are driving towards,
Yeah.
because we see that in this part of the world, customers are asking for more, and they're asking for a more inclusive experience, and they don't want to just go and drive a half an hour or 1 hour to the escape room and then play for 30 minutes, and then the experience stops there, and that's very unfortunate. What I remember in my childhood was Dave and Buster's, right? And that was really the starting point. I mean, 30 years, 35 years later, I still remember whoever invited me for a birthday party when I was in my 8, 9, 10 to that Chuck E. Cheese birthday was probably a childhood memory. But it was everything around it. It wasn't just the games. It was the food. It was the snacks. It was also the type of games. To answer your question, yes, we deeply believe in that kind of FEC experience. But we still need to level up because, as you said, the customer expectations are always even more demanding in this part of the world sometimes versus North America. I mean, like you said, the cinemas have waiters, they have sofas, they serve you food in the cinema, hot food on a table. You're dining while watching an unbelievable movie. So they're really finding ways to bring that next level of experience, and that's where U.S. experience of FEC, that such as what you're doing, and linking it with Asian culture, is a super exciting experience. So it's a great exercise.
And this is like what I find really interesting, because if we say it's a third, food and beverage, games, and alcohol, how are you bringing food and beverage into some of the activities that really that make it hard to do, right? So if I'm playing a VR game, I'm not having like three sliders
Burger.
while I'm doing it, right? If I am even karting, maybe karting, like my friends and loved ones are like having something to eat while I'm karting. And the same thing with like an arcade. It's like the money maker of FECs. How do we drive food and beverage into that? I mean, we do miniature golf courses inside. There's a table everywhere. They have wait staff that come to you as you're doing it. But like, how are you driving food and beverage into like these areas that really are not built for it?
That's where we need to continue to innovate in finding ways to change the classic of having a center console of food, and maybe being more innovative, like what exactly the example of the cinema. How can we bring those two together? Obviously, having a slider play while playing VR, not possible, but is it a good excuse as a downtime after playing for people to reconnect and to share that experience of what they just went through?
Like the
Like,
reliving
I,
lounge or something, or like like the
I,
Monday morning quarterback lounge.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
we just had a great time. Let's regroup. Let's have a drink. Let's have a sandwich. 15, 20 minutes. It was a hell of a size session. I mean, we just played for 15 minutes or 10 minutes. I want to tell you what happened. Brag about how I got you in the corner and how you
Yeah,
tripped and
right.
fell down, and look at the video, and then maybe even sell that photo, sell that video, or even show, maybe there's some products that can come along, and to say, well, that was a keeper. That's when I won victory day, and then you cheers with a soft drink or a snack, and then you go back again. And that was like what I was saying earlier, is like, you go to the escape room, you come out and like, that was a good game, and like, all right, let's go home. No, you let's regroup. Food has always been the social place, has always been, in every culture, has been where people get together, and
Yes.
putting that kind of social element in the middle, has its importance. Now, maybe should we explore putting it in different areas? Maybe there's 2 or 3 different F&B venues. You and I explore a lot what's happening in different FEC players in the North America or in Europe. I think we still need to continue to find and explore another model for Asia.
So for the VR, if me and 3 of my friends are playing VR and we're having the time of our life, when we leave the VR, can we sit at the bar and replay our VR experience through what we saw through the headsets? Which
Absolutely.
would be fun. It's like, oh, I totally smoked you here. That's great,
Yeah, and kind of recounting, reliving what we went through, but on as a spectator. Like, that was a really good shot. Oh, that's how I got taken over. You're saying that FECs are evolving. How do you see the FEC of the future, Rob? That's a $1 million question. How do you think FECs in the next 10 years, in 2030, 2035, how will it look like?
I think it's to become way more interactive. So the biggest problem with FECs now is bowling, arcade, bar, axe throwing, all those activities are not integrated. And there are like at least 10 companies that are like, oh yeah, we can do this. But what I want to do is I want to hit like a bullseye on the axe and get a free beer at the bar. I want to actually crush this arcade game and get a free thing for the axe throwing. All the activities in FECs are not integrated, and it's mind-blowing. And every time I go to one of these conventions, and everybody says they do it, by the way, and I have like 3 companies that say they're doing it, but it doesn't exist. And the idea that you should be able to walk into an FEC, from karting to food and beverage to that stupid crane game, it should all be integrated in one experience. Look, oh, I picked up the thing, the crane. Yes, I get 5 free laps on the karting. Right? And so like that experience, technology-wise, by the way, I actually think that experience is going to be fully integrated. But also, and we're seeing this, I mean, I don't even want to talk about AI, but from like the Spark Bowling, and now like 360 has the stuff that they project on the things. Can you imagine when all these things, and again, it's all about integration, what I think, right? Because right now, karting is karting, bowling is bowling, the arcade is the arcade. There's no integration between them. So if the technology integrates, I think the idea is like the complete experience. Whatever's projected on like the karting thing, how come it doesn't follow me into the arcade? How come like that avatar that is on karting that I knocked the avatar out or whatever, how come that the avatar doesn't follow me into the thing? How come it doesn't lead me into bowling? How come it doesn't take me into laser tag? And how come the whole experience is a fully integrated experience? We have a lot of great pieces, and the vendors are awesome, and they're incredibly creative, but they never go outside this, right? They think about like their experience, like the VR and whatever. How come the VR people, why can't I go into the VR and step into a go-kart and have the exact same VR experience, right? Mm-hmm. And then once I'm out of the go-kart with that same VR experience, go bowl some Spark Brunswick bowling or something like that. It's that kind of sort of technology thing that brings all these activities together. That's going to make a huge difference.
You're right. As much as we're trying to bring the games under one roof, now we have a department store, different activities. Before you had your standalone shop in a plaza, and now we kind of put it all under one roof. Great, but now it's still not one experience where you could still play it, but I hear where you're coming from. It's they're still disconnected. The game is not connected from one to another, and that could be.
Yeah, like if I'm like badass Bob in the VR game, why can't I transfer that avatar to karting and be the same character in karting? Sort of like an integrated, sort of like once I walk into this FEC, it's all one experience. And and that's basically it's technology is beyond me and whatever, but it has to do with the same thing I was saying before. Like it starts out with being able to have one card, right, that we struggle with, that I can actually buy food, do bowling, and do arcade. The next step is a bigger experience.
And so if you look at some of the FECs in North America, which one would be the most inspiring for you? Or is there something that you think needs to change besides the integration?
Well, it has to do with my vintage. So it's actually a personal experience. Obviously, I actually really like Punch Bowl Social. Basically, it's geared towards 21 to 35. It's a very comfortable environment. They literally will have like two bowling lanes randomly placed in the middle of the place. And then next to it will be a karaoke room. Next to it will be like a library of big wing chairs. And it's very intimate and it's very quirky. And I'm an architect, so this is kind of like the language that appeals to me. And then over here will be like a foosball. And then over here will be like two more lanes. Probably incredibly inefficient and how they laid it out. But the idea about it is like if you go with friends, you can sit here and have two lanes of bowling to yourself. Just like when we do like big bowling lanes and we try to isolate. If you go here and we're going to hang out and we're going to do the karaoke room, we're going to go here and we're going to do this. It's a bunch of like really like individual environments that I think are really very nicely put together. And whoever the architects are, I give them all the credit in the world. And, in terms of like, like mini golf is like crazy. And again, I'm a fan of like the puttery because it appeals to me as a designer because there's lots of like really beautifully designed bars and little like vignettes. It's small. And I think that between the two of these, that's probably the common theme. It's small little intimate spaces. It's not walking into this big vast like bowling alley, right? But those are the two that I actually personally think are really well designed. And not by me.
Would you have a name to share?
Well, the puttery, the one that I was talking about, is Minneapolis, and the Punch Bowl Social is in Indianapolis. Two great, if you're like doing FECs, and this is mostly for older social gaming people, right? So these people are going to spend a lot of time there. They don't bring their kids, and they do a big food and beverage. They're actually really like very nice.
It's a lot of fuel for thought in terms of how can we move away from big is better to maybe more boutique-y and social. We're going back to that key word, social. People want to connect. They wanna share an experience. And when you go back to what are your greatest memories, it's not the car. It's not it's not the TV. It's that time together. And so giving an opportunity for people to spend time together in those kind of little areas. Maybe that's the new direction. Maybe you're pointing to something really interesting there. And I think in Asia, that could be potentially a breakthrough.
It's a pretty nice experience that if you can actually offer somebody, like you go here with your four best friends, and you spend 4 hours there and you have the time of your life. You don't feel rushed. You spend a lot on food and beverage because we're trying to run a business here, right? And this goes right back to one of our first questions. Why do I like doing entertainment architecture? It's not an awful thing creating an environment where people connect to each other and smile and happy. And when they're leaving, they're like, what a great time that was, right? Let's like build on that relationship. Let's fall in love, who knows, but it's kind of like a wonderful sort of like vibe, and like these little environments, especially these places, and I might have aged out of most of these places, by the way, Claude, but it's one of the things that I love doing. That's why I love doing it. We go back to this. Tell me when you go back to like Neo and Doozy and you see all those little kids running around Doozy, tell me you don't feel great. It's like it's incredible. It's like parents bonding with their children and they're having fun. It's awesome.
This is gold. Thanks again for sharing. I wanted to go down a bit more on you personally. How has your work in the entertainment architecture influenced the way you view your personal experience in the entertainment spaces? The fact that you're a specialist in architectural, how does that impact the way that you experience when you go to to FECs or other
It's
entertainment
awful
venues?
because I'm a critic. All I do is like when I walk in, and I will guarantee you do the exact same thing. That's fantastic. Why am I not doing that? It's like, and then it's like, why'd they do this? What's going on? Because we like live and die by these experiences, right? And it also makes it hard to be a design professional because we can't take stuff back. If I like blow something and I put like the redemption in the wrong area, I can't come back and say, "Oh, Claude, yeah, that was a mistake. Can we actually move that over to the other side?" So basically, as a design professional, what I do is whenever time I go to these places, and this is part of like the learning experience or whatever, I don't want to say I can't enjoy them because I do enjoy them, but because it's kind of what we do, it's more of a like, is this working or is this not working? Is this something that I want to include in the next thing I do, or is this something I totally want to stay away from? I can't walk into an FEC and just be like, la, 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 this bowling. I'll be like, why'd they do that detail? What's wrong with that? That should have done this. There's a missed opportunity, and it's kind of how we roll, And that's not a bad thing. It's because we love designing FECs, so the more we're in FECs, the better, right?
Could you share with us some of your current projects right now, just to see the kind of broad scope? What are the kind of projects that you're working on right now?
We are working with some larger theater vendors who are going into the FECs. I started as a theater architect, right? And so it's amazing how much of our theater clients are moving into the FEC realm because it's a wonderful partnership. We all know it is basically like theater has tentpole pictures. They're going to drive everybody into the building 4 times a year. Everybody goes into the building 4 times a year. What are they doing the rest of the time? They should be coming to the FEC and bowling and so forth. So it's a really great relationship. But what we're doing a lot of as well is basically kind of like one-offs, independent FEC operators. I don't think we have a single project that doesn't have pickleball in it, by the way. Have you jumped on the pickleball bandwagon yet?
It's getting out of control here in Asia and Vietnam.
It's like
unbelievable.
At some point I'm going to play it, but yes, we have pickleball and everything. Axe throwing is waning. I think axe throwing was the pickleball from 5 years ago. So 5 years from now, you need to figure out what you're going to put in those pickleball courts. But it's a lot of sort of independent, like we're doing projects that people are doing like Top Golf kind of concepts. A lot of miniature golf, like the Puttery and Putt Shack, which is like sort of technology driven, environment driven miniature golf. And karting. Karting is like huge. It's amazing. The amount of work that we're doing. Some friends of ours from 360 are sending all sorts of like work our way around the world. I think that you're basically, when you're going to open an FEC, are you a social gaming FEC, which means you're going to have like pickleball and duck pin bowling and that type of thing, or are you a karting venue? You kind of have to pick your premier activity, and then everything else walks around it. And of course, there's always arcades and other stuff like that. Few sort of like major sort of like theater folks. But a lot of like independent like startups. We're doing like some trampoline parks, kind of like a one-liner, which is great. I wish these places existed when my kids were that age.
All right, awesome. Finish us off, maybe a reflection on your career. Any advice that you would give to young architects looking into specializing in the FEC?
I will say that you probably do the exact same thing. I travel a lot. And if I'm walking from my hotel to a restaurant and there's an FEC in between, I walk in. You have to look what other people are doing, because the more experience, the more you see, and even like going into different restaurants and the idea of it, like people have like, there's so many crazy, incredible ideas and some bad ones. If you're traveling, whenever you have the opportunity, hop into like a restaurant and check out the bar, right? It's right in the front door. You don't have to have a cocktail, but just look at it. If you walking by an FEC in a strange city and see how they have dealt with it, and it's going to actually shape your opinion, like, well, this is something that I really think is a great idea, or this is something I never want to do. right? Seeing stuff in real life is huge. And there's no substitute for that, for like young architects, young designers, young developers. Tell me, like when you walk through a city and you walk by an FEC, do you not like pop in to see what they're doing?
Automatically, it's a must.
Yeah, right?
It's part of the travel itinerary.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of fun because it's either like, wow, this is really beautiful. I wish I had done this, or like, wow, this is awful. Thank God I didn't do this.
Last question, Rob. Outside of architecture, what kind of passions or quotes or books fuel your creativity, and how do they influence the way you design or you approach your designs?
If you talk to any of the young architects in my office, they will tell you I love cinema. And the amount of times I've shown them stills of Stanley Kubrick films, saying, "Look at this." Because they're visually stunning. You know, just images in cinema, I always find cinema does kind of like the same thing we're doing, right? You know, they're there to stimulate an experience, get an emotion going or whatever, whether it's like exciting or tense or whatever. Yeah, if you talk to any of the young architects in my office, they'll be like, really? Another cinema reference? Most of the time it's Stanley Kubrick, by the way. Like 2001: A Space Odyssey, like that, like scene where he's walking with the spacesuit. I've shown that to like 1 million people. They never listen to me. They give me that look like I'm crazy. But we were doing something. It was a karting venue, and it was supposed to be like full of energy. Have you seen the original John Wick movie? So in the original John Wick movie, when he's at the Red Circle, the club where he unfortunately bang, 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 he walks onto the stage, and there's the red circle pulsating, and the music is pulsating, and there's this one visual image that is so impactful that I told like my design team, like, you see that? When we walk in this building, I want to feel that. And so I love cinema. It's like one of my favorite things, and because apparently they're way creative than me. But it's actually good. There's always something and it could be like quieter moments or playful moments for like children and stuff like that. But I find myself going back and back and back to cinema.
Robert McCall, thank you for all your sharing in the architectural world. It was really a lot of insight, a lot of great information, a lot of actually fuel for thought on our next project. So really appreciate you're taking some time, your evening, our morning here in Asia.
Yes, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.